Very, very strongly indeed. I'm joined by Paul Turner, Head of Chambers and Immigration Barrister at Imperium Chambers. Been quite a big day today, Paul, in the House of Commons. The illegal migration bill went to the House of Lords. 20 amendments rejecting the bill, and it's come back to the Commons today. So where are we?
Well, today I was just looking at the news on that, and the Commons have essentially re-amended the bill or put it back into its original format. Whether one agrees with it or doesn't, and I tend to agree with the amendments made by the House of Lords, but the House of Commons, as is their prerogative, have pretty much overruled all of them. But it's worth noting that the government did make a number of concessions in respect of the illegal migration bill.
On dates in particular.
On dates, and considering it's not going to be retroactive.
Yeah. And
some concessions in respect of detaining children.
Another 10,000 people will come and just be allowed to stay.
I don't think they'll just be allowed to stay. I mean, they will have their claims processed in the normal way. But I think what's relevant is I was looking at the figures, and last year the government enforced removal of 580 failed asylum seekers. Now, there were 74,000 people that claimed asylum.
That's a minute number.
I was quite shocked myself. I thought they might have got up to 1,000. And the year before, 2021, they managed to get rid of 336.
But 20 years ago, when David Blunkett was Home Secretary, we were getting rid of 10 or 15,000 a year.
You're completely right, Nigel. The figures were 10, I think 15,000 was the peak.
Yeah, it was.
And then it slid down and it hovered around the 5,000 mark.
So why can't we do this anymore? We seem to be tied up with our own courts, with worries about the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. You know, I mean, here we have an elected government with an 80... It had, not anymore, but it had an 80-seat majority, and yet it appears to be impotent.
I think the issue is really one of funding for the Home Office, because we heard about that they're on target to have 2,500 or 2,400 asylum caseworkers to make more decisions. But in January this year, there was, I think, 1,333 decision-makers, and as of the 1st of May, there was 1,280. And they're carrying out asylum interviews at the same rate they were doing in 2020, when there were twice the number of people. So there's a real problem in the Home Office. If they're not making decisions quickly, even if that's decisions to say you can't claim asylum here, then how are people going to be removed?
Well, we called, didn't we, the Home Office not fit for purpose over a decade ago, and nothing much appears to have changed. Now, Rwanda, Paul, Rwanda, as a barrister, even Ken Clarke came out thinking that Rwanda might be a good idea this week, and yet it's been ruled illegal.
Yes, by the Court of Appeal. Well, the legal terminology, or the reason for it, is one of it's refoulement. It's a French word, and it means that there was a risk that individuals sent to Rwanda might be sent back to their home country. The court, I didn't find that Rwanda was per se unsafe. It's quite right to say that. But they did say there was a risk of people being shipped back to their own country, and that breaches the United Kingdom's international obligations. But again, when one looks at Rwanda, I think the idea was to send maybe 300 to 500 people to Rwanda. That's all the Rwandans can take.
But it was meant to be a disincentive.
But if there's 74,000 people, only 300 are going to Rwanda, at a cost of £170,000 per person, it's not going to be much of a disincentive. I mean, I tried to do the figures for 50,000 people at 170,000, but my calculator couldn't handle the norms.
Yeah. So the only answer is to do what the Australians did, and Tony Abbott ignored international obligations, completely ignored them. He was screamed at and shouted at by the United Nations, the European Union, the Foreign Office here, and he just towed the boats back to Indonesia, and you know what? The boats stopped coming. We're going to have to break international law to solve this, aren't we?
Well, I wouldn't want to break international law.
Why not?
Because I'm a lawyer.
Well, OK. but I mean, yeah, no, I get that, of course. But there is a thing called national interest. And what is international law anyway?
Well, you need to get someone that does international law. I'm only an immigration
No,
lawyer,
I know, but I mean...
essentially, it's what the governing of obligations between states and living in a civilised society. And as a first world country, which is prides itself on being a liberal-ish democracy, it ill behoves us to close the door to refugees. I mean, we have a long and proud tradition of...
Yeah, not of young men chucking their iPhones into the channel when they reach the 12-mile mark, and many of them advertising openly on TikTok they're coming in to join criminal gangs. I don't call them refugees.
Well, there is a problem. I would.
A problem?
Well, there's a problem with a small minority of asylum seekers, which blackens the name, if one can use that term, of the great majority.
Probably not these days, but anyway.
I'd probably get struck off for saying it, but it's not stopped me before.
No, look, you know, this government is in major trouble, isn't it? Major trouble. I just repeat the point, and maybe I'll ask Jacob Rees-Mogg.